Support for Trifles comes from listeners like you, who support us through Patreon and Substack. Bonus material, thank you gifts, and more await at patreon.com/trifles and at trifles.substack.com. And now you can enjoy some Trifles swag, mugs, notepads, and oval stickers, available in our store. Find it at ihearofsherlock.com/merchandise.
Welcome to Trifles, a weekly podcast about the Sherlock Holmes stories.
It is, of course, a trifle, but there is nothing so important as trifles.
Yes, there were men that were dancing, creeping, and crooked, but there are so many other details to pick apart in the stories.
Pray, be precise as to details.
You know the plots, but what about the minutiae? What's a tantalus? Or a gasogene? And what's the difference between a hansom cab and a four-wheeler?
You are very inquisitive, Mr. Holmes.
It is my business to know what other people don't know.
Scott Monty and Bert Wolder will have the answers to these questions and more in Trifles.
The game's afoot.
Episode 486, Spats. Hello there, and welcome to Trifles, the Sherlock Holmes podcast where we get into the minutiae in the Sherlock Holmes stories. I'm Scott Monty.
I'm Bert Wolder.
And Bert, are you ready for a little spat?
I am. I'm ready for spats. Come on.
All right.
Let's go.
Put up your dukes.
Put up your dukes.
Put up your earls.
Put down your toes.
Yeah, well, this is almost a trifling Trifles episode, but we thought we could squeeze a little more out of it than normal.
Yeah. Yeah. This has got the hallmarks of 45 minutes of wasted time.
We could easily wax poetic for an hour on this.
Yeah, sure.
But it is kind of falls into the realm of clothing, attire, style, etc. And we were, before we started recording, trying to remember if we ever covered this subject before. It seems like it's something we should have because it is certainly a trifle. But in looking in our archives and our notes, we found that we couldn't. So we will discuss the very few Sherlock Holmes stories where we can find spats, but more importantly, we'll help you understand why anyone would need to wear spats at all in the first place. And also, in the first place, we'd like to ask you to support the show. If you can do that on Patreon or on Substack, that's the easiest way to do it. We have links for those in the show notes. Just check out whichever one works best for you. And as always, you can go to SherlockHolmesPodcast.com to see the show notes. You can also see them in whatever podcasting platform you happen to be listening to us on, whether it's iTunes or it's now known as Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, or even YouTube. You can find us everywhere you listen to podcasts. But make sure you're signed up, subscribe, following us, whatever you happen to do, so you get notified when a new episode comes out. And if you'd like to be part of our community, discussing things, leaving comments, etc., that is available on Patreon and on Substack. So check those out. And we thank you in advance. Spats. Bert, have you ever owned a pair of spats?
I have not.
Or even one spat? I can't imagine there's a market for a single spat out there.
No. Wait, isn't that a spite? Two spites make a spat, right? Or make spats.
I'm sputtering over here.
I had a spite, and now I've got a pair of spats. I think that's how it works.
Spat.
Yeah.
Well, if you had one spat, I suppose you might be Jonathan Small or someone else singularly disabled. But spats go a ways back, and we're looking at the history of spats here. Let's make sure we get up to speed on that, and then we'll reveal who the spats wearers are in the canon. But where do we find the very beginnings of spats?
Well, it depends on where you look. I think you find them right over your right shoulder. If you look over in the corner.
Oh, there.
Yeah.
There they are.
Actually, it seems to be in the 18th century, and it seems to be in the military, in military gaiters. And the idea was for 18th century soldiers, says at least one authority, to protect their stockings and shoes from mud and debris. Because, of course, in these days, this is before macadam highways and concrete highways and things like that. And the roads were pretty full of all sorts of things, refuse and horse droppings and all sorts of unseemly things that you wouldn't want to accumulate around your footwear or the bottoms of your legs.
And, one would imagine that stockings or, certainly, as you say, the shoes, the boots, etc., not as easy to clean as frequently as we might do so today. So you'd want to do your best to keep those clean. Now, here's the thing, though. If you're wearing spats over your shoes or boots to keep them clean, and you have to then, I guess, launder or clean off your spats, or your servants have to clean off your spats, and then you go and put spats right on over your shoes again, well, who knows whether your shoes are dirty or not if they're covered with the spats?
Well, that's true, except the spat doesn't cover your entire shoe. It really just covers, the ankle down sort of to the, I can't remember the term of the shoe component. What is that called? The
tongue,
the
bridge.
No, it's down. Well, it's certainly what happens is you would have your laces and ankle covered by the spat, and everything below that, including, of course, the last inch, the sole of your boot, and so on, would not be covered.
Well, there you go. Okay, so it was really out of a utilitarian notion that spats were first worn. By the time we get into the late Victorian, early Edwardian era, I suppose we find that we move from function to fashion. And spats at that point were not quite as uniformly worn. It was more of a social status. That the idea is that if you were wealthy enough to be able to wear spats and keep them clean, you probably had a staff back at home who were responsible for cleaning those spats every evening. And spats typically, I know they came in a variety of colors, but they were typically lighter colored, like a dove gray or even a white. And I think according to Emily Post, back in the early part of the 20th century, the guideline was that gentlemen's spats, or ladies, if ladies wore spats too, should match their gloves. So you would want white spats with white gloves, dove gray spats with dove gray leather or felt gloves.
Now, there are a couple of interesting things that we didn't, semi-interesting things, too, that we didn't mention yet. One is where'd the word come from? And the word came from spatterdashes. Now, where that came from beats me, but obviously it's a good description of what happens if you're wearing your shiny leather boots out in a rainy or muddy location. You're going to be getting, spatters of mud and this, that, and the other thing, and dashes of that. The other thing is the difference between spats and gaiters. We mentioned that spats originated in the 18th century for soldiers, and the gaiter is taller than the spat. The gaiters, cover the foot maybe up to the calf. And that was hiking and military protection of your the bottoms of your feet and so on. And
Is that Is that like the difference between gators and crocodiles?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
You only find gators in Florida, and crocodiles are found overseas.
Yes, yeah, exactly right.
No, different gators.
Yeah,
Gaiters. Gators is what we're talking about.
Yes. Well, and then there's other things that do that. So if you're, I'm sure most of our listeners are doing this right now. They probably got out a pencil and paper and say to themselves, hey, how many things designed to keep your legs protected and warm can I make a list of?
Sure.
Well, gaiters, spats, but friends, don't forget about the puttees. Don't forget about chaps. Chaps are more than just people you meet down at the club. These are things that you'd be wearing in the West. And then, there are leg warmers and things like that. So the ingenuity of the human race to protect legs and ankles or feet from snow or dirt or the cold, has been pretty interesting over the years.
Yeah.
If that's your idea of interesting.
Well, and I suppose along with the history of the name, we should talk a little bit about the construction of the spats. They are designed to wrap around the lower part of the leg and top of the foot. They typically fasten underneath the shoe with a buckle. Goes from one side of the spat to the other. And then they're closed around the foot and leg with a series of buttons. And I believe there was even a tool that people used to use to button their spats. Kind of a handled item with a little hook on the end. It would be used to pull the button through the buttonhole. It would make it easier because, a number of designs of spats, particularly the ladies' side, had small buttons that were very close together, and it might be very difficult to maneuver the fabric around the button without some kind of helpmate like a tool.
Oh, I never thought of that. The button hook. Yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Now, I have a pair of spats. They're gray felt spats, but they are of modern construction. The buckle underneath, or I should say the strap underneath, is an elastic. So there is no buckle. It's just an elastic from one side to the other. And rather than buttons, these are snaps, but they're designed to look like buttons. So it's much easier to take them on and off than the traditional spats, but they still provide that covering and just, again, a little bit of elegance if you were to look at them as someone was wearing them.
Now you say these are of modern construction. So do I take that to mean you sort of picked these up at Walmart, did you, when they were having a sort of a spat special?
It was a 2-for-1. Yeah, I got 2 spats. For the price
2
of one.
spats, no waiting.
I came across them in the mid-1990s, I think, early to mid-90s in a used clothing store, a vintage clothing store in Boston. And I used to wear them to the speckled band. Maybe I'll do that again. Maybe I'll wear them to the speckled band meeting.
You must. Now take that as a commitment. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, always. Well, turning to the canon. So should we turn to the canon at this point?
Well, I'm interested in what happened that spats no longer became part of the regular attire.
Yeah.
I know people looked to the royal family quite a bit in the early part of the 20th century. Edward VIII became a style icon. The Prince of Wales check, and the Windsor tie. Of course, he later became the Duke of Windsor. People looked to him for a lot of fashion advice, and I know his grandfather, Edward VII. People started unbuttoning the bottom button of their waistcoat to mimic his style. And of course, he was just too fat to button the bottom one, but people started mimicking him. So what about spats?
Well, I think that's George V. If you look up the sources, this was one of the things that King George V used to wear. And then around 1926, he cast it away along with his frock coat? Is that also what he cast away in favor of a morning coat? And,
that's exactly
after
right.
a while, when the shock wore off, people said, well, if it's good enough for the king, it's good enough for me.
There you go.
Casting these spats off.
Yeah, we've got another source, too, that said that, after that, kind of into the 30s and 40s, spats became more costumey in pop culture. You look at photos of someone like Al Capone, or even the appearance of the Penguin and the Joker in early Batman comics. They always wore spats. So it became almost camp in some ways, that they were no longer practical and thought to be more foppish or dandyish as people wore them.
Yeah, I think William Powell, when he played Philo Vance in the movies, was saddled with spats and a walking stick and things like that.
Well, there you go. But you can still find them in vintage clothing stores. You can probably find them in some of the online emporiums that specialize in period costume, and it's rather rare to see someone wearing spats these days, but it's not out of the question.
This is a real marketing opportunity for Nike and Adidas, and the others, so that the well-dressed person, when they go out for their jog with their running shoes, you can also get matching or contrasting.
Well, we just missed the Boston Marathon this week. They could have debuted some of their spats there.
Oh, boy, and if your Scion Society has a logo, think how attractive that would be.
Oh, there you go. Logo on the side.
Scion meeting your men and your women. Of course, this is a gender-neutral sort of garment. We're properly adorned with their spats.
There you go.
Hey, if I think I need to call Monica and see if we can get that added to the BSI.
Spats. Oh my gosh, that's funny.
Yeah, well, they'll sell 2 of them. I mean, you'll buy a set, and I'll admire you.
Yeah, from afar.
Oh dear.
Well, let's turn to the canon. Would you be surprised to know that Helen Stoner could have used a pair of spats?
Really?
Yes.
Why is that, Grisby?
Yeah, well, Holmes had her upstairs when she first came to visit, and he kind of looked over. He said, "You've had a good drive in a dog cart along heavy roads before you reach the station." And, of course, she was surprised by this. And he said, "Well, there's no mystery, madam. The left arm of your jacket is spattered with mud in no less than 7 places."
Okay, but that doesn't have anything to do with their ankles.
No, but the idea of being spattered.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I think when Watson had oatmeal, I think that was pretty much a risk for people who were at the table. I can tell you've been dining with Dr. Watson.
Fast and Furious.
Mr. Holmes, how on earth did you know?
Yeah, well, that is not her feet getting spattered with mud, but her arm did get spattered. So it's the kind of thing that spats would have protected from, although on feet rather than on arms.
Yeah. Well, it's a good point, yeah. Spattering.
Yeah.
Well, but
how about spats, though?
Yeah, the standpoint of direct references.
Yes.
We can turn to 2 cases, and one is the Adventure of Wisteria Lodge. We have it's in the earliest part of the case too. Holmes has received this telegram. Have just had the most incredible and grotesque experience. May I consult you, Scott Eccles, Post Office, Charing Cross. And then, moments later, we hear, "A measured step was heard upon the stairs, and a moment later a stout, tall, gray-whiskered, and solemnly respectable person was ushered into the room. His life history was written in his heavy features and pompous manner. From his spats to his gold-rimmed spectacles, he was a conservative, a churchman, a good citizen, orthodox and conventional to the last degree. But some amazing experience had disturbed his native composure and left its traces in his bristling hair, his flushed and angry cheeks, and his flurried, excited manner." Now, I always thought particularly that paragraph shows you how far Watson has come in his observation of detail. It's quite a Holmesian list of conclusions reached by looking at this gent's appearance.
Yeah, it's really a complete sketch of John Scott Eccles. And in observing that, he was fairly well put together, it sounds like. But later on, Holmes says, why didn't you come when you first woke up? And he said, your telegram was dispatched about 1. It's now 2:15, but no one can glance at your toilet and attire without seeing that your disturbance dates from the moment of your waking. And he smoothed down his unbrushed hair and felt his unshaven chin. So think about that for a minute. He didn't even have time to brush his hair or to shave. And yet, Bert, he had time to put on his spats.
Yeah, sure. Well, you're not going to shove them into your pocket. He he was putting on his boots and quite reflexively decided.
He did have an overnight bag, didn't he?
Well, he must have. Yeah, I would think so. But
that kind of shows you how important spats were to his outward appearance of being respectable. Even though shaving and brushing your hair did not. I suppose that the hair would be kept under the hat, so it's not as big of a deal to the general public. But once you get inside in Baker Street, you got to take that hat off and show off your bedhead.
Well, and then we turn to the illustrious client. And again, it's early on in the case. It's we're in Baker Street, and we have a little conversation, and there's a message that Holmes has received from the Carlton Club. And, Watson says that he came back to Baker Street before the time named, and sharp to the half hour, Colonel Sir James Damery, who has sent this note from the Carlton Club, was announced. It's hardly necessary to describe him, for many will remember the large, bluff, honest personality, that broad, clean-shaven face, and above all, that pleasant, mellow voice, frankness, shone from his gray Irish eyes, and good humor played round his mobile, smiling lips, his lucent top hat, his dark frock coat. Indeed, every detail, from the pearl pin and the black satin cravat to the lavender spats over the varnished shoes, spoke of the meticulous care and dress for which he was famous. The big, masterful aristocrat dominated the little room.
Lavender spats. How about that?
Yeah.
And here's another detail about Colonel Sir James that sticks with me. So he's there. He acknowledges Dr. Watson. Holmes invites him to sit down. He says, "Do you mind if I smoke?" Oh, no, actually, he doesn't say, "Do you mind?" He says, "Don't you smoke?" And it's clear he does not. And Holmes says, "Well, then you'll excuse me if I light my pipe." And they start talking about Baron Gruner. And at a certain point, Colonel Damery throws up his kid-gloved hands with a laugh. Now, two things about this. One, You have to wonder if the gloves matched the spats the way Emily Post would have insisted. And number 2, why was he still wearing his gloves if he was A, indoors, and B, already greeted Holmes and Watson?
Well, Holmes was not a tidy housekeeper, and he was offended by the dust.
Or maybe he was just trying to protect himself from disease. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, he could have been filling his fountain pen earlier in the day and made a mess of it. And just decided to keep the gloves on so that no one sees the ink stains.
I know. Maybe he cut his finger using his spat tool. Spat buttoning tool.
His button hook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who knows? But yeah, those are the only 2 instances that we find spats in the canon. Isn't that fascinating? And 2 men who were aristocratic in nature, or at least trying to seem aristocratic in nature. As the description says, no detail was left untouched when it came to Colonel Sir James Damery.
Yeah, well, clearly, particularly Colonel Sir James Damery is the real deal when it comes to aristocratic impressions. I mean, Watson says, many will remember that large, bluff, honest personality. He's clearly a personality.
The aristocrats. And that's just a trifle.
It is, of course, a trifle, but there is nothing so important as trifles.
Please join us again next week for another installment of Trifles. Show notes are available on SherlockHolmesPodcast.com. Please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and be sure to check out our longer show, I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, where we interview notable Sherlockians and share news of the Sherlockian world.
You've taken my breath away, Mr. Holmes.
I will just put on my slippers. Ah.